Welcome to the Publish Her podcast, a place where you can come to get inspiration, motivation, help, encouragement, and support in your journey to write, publish, and sell your book. Hosted by Alexa Bigwharf.
'Cause I've been where you've been, and I felt what you're feeling, and I don't want to get in your way.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Publish Her podcast. We're going to be talking about something a little different than we've ever discussed before today, which I'm excited about, but all of it in relationship to how you can be a better writer and use different tools to help you enhance what you already have within yourself, I suppose would be a good way as we dig into Enneagram types and writing. So today with me, I have Mary Adkins, who is a writing coach and founder of the Book Incubator, a 12-month program to write, revise, and pitch your novel or memoir. She is author of the novels When You Read This, Indie Next Pick, Best Book of 2019 by Good Housekeeping and Real Simple, Privilege, Today.com, Best Summer Read, New York Post, Best Book of the Week, and Palm Beach, recently named one of the New York Post's Best Book of 2021. Congratulations. Those are great honors. Her books have been published in 13 countries, and her essays and reporting have appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, Slate, and more. A graduate of Yale Law School and Duke University, so a very intelligent woman we are discussing with today. She helps aspiring authors finish their books with joy and clarity. You can apply for the Book Incubator by going to apply.maryadkinswriter.com, and that link and anything else that we want to include after the conversation today will be included in the show notes. So if you're driving, don't crash your car to write that down. You can go to the show notes and grab all of those links in a moment. So welcome, Mary. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Okay. Well, let's talk just first to get everyone into it. You're a novelist. So how did your writing begin?
As you said, I did go to law school, but I was not a lawyer for very long. I was a lawyer for 7 months, which at the law firm where I went was a record. No one had left that early.
I can imagine people don't probably do that too often.
No. And it's because being a lawyer was not a good fit. I was not a very good lawyer. I didn't like being a lawyer, but I also really wanted to be writing. And I think like most writers, I knew since I was a little girl that that's really what I wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I also had really liked school. So like I loved law school, but just like I had loved college, but it wasn't until I was in the workforce, as a lawyer that it really hit me. Oh, I want to be writing. I want to be doing that as a career. So I quit, like I said, my job pretty early on and decided I wanted to write and, books. I knew I wanted to write novels and pretty early but I didn't know how. I mean, I had taken one creative writing course in college and, the professor had given me B- on my first story and that had deterred me for years. So I didn't take any more creative writing classes in college. So then I quit my law job to become a novelist and just I remember Googling how many words are in a novel and the internet said 70,000. And so I just wrote until I hit that number. And then unsurprisingly, that draft needed a lot of work. And so it was 6 or 7 years of reworking that draft and like actually learning how to write a novel before I found a literary agent for it. And after that, things got easier, but it took me a while to kind of navigate that world.
So all of your books have been traditionally published?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. And I would was that journey of finding a literary agent difficult? What was that? I know that has nothing to do with our topic, but these are the things people are always curious about. Did that take a long time? Was that a good experience?
It was by far the hardest part of my whole writing career was getting the literary agent. I queried agents for years. I would, it was this iterative process. I'd be pitching agents. They would ask for a full manuscript. They would read it. They would say no, but with something vague, like it's the voice, or I just didn't really relate to the story. It would be like not something I really knew how to act on. But I would rework the draft anyway, over and over. And then interestingly, and this is what I always tell people about finding a literary agent, I found it to be a lot more like dating than I expected it to be. It was not like, I would have a lot of kind of flirtations with
Uh-huh.
literary agents where they'd be like, let's talk, or we would have phone conversations, or that we'd get on and they would say things like, well, would you consider writing this different book? And they would pitch me a book idea, and that would be interesting. And and then I would think about it. And in a couple of instances, I actually said, yeah, I'll work that up. And so I would like work up a book proposal for an idea that they wanted me to write. So it was this really interesting back and forth. And my literary agent ended up being, who's still my literary agent, ended up being someone who I had this kind of back and forth with for a while before she offered me representation.
Wow.
Um, she said no to my novel draft, but she said, I do have thoughts for you. So we got on the phone. She was generous enough that we spoke for about 45 minutes. And so I rewrote the draft. I sent it to her again. She's like, no. She said no again. It was like a parable. She said no 3 times. And then I sent it to her one last time, and she's like, yes, you've done it. So it was this kind
Yay.
of, it was a happy ending in the end, but altogether, I think we had back and forths of my with my drafts for maybe a year and a half.
Yeah.
So it was that none of that process was what I expected.
Right. Well, I think that's a really important message for people to hear, because I think, with self-publishing making it so easy for people to just finish their books and get it out there, I think that has created an entire culture of people that feel like this should just be a really quick thing. Like, my book is done. I should get an agent if I'm going the traditional route, and it's going to be really quick. But, I have another one of our authors who went with an agent, or her agent posted on social media the other day that it had been 18 months and the book was finally ready to pitch to so it's a long, even once you find that agent, it can still be a long time going through all of the process to get it where it even needs to be to pitch it. So that's important. I think that's really important for authors to understand that the traditional route, obviously, with the successes that you've had with your book and the awards that it's won and things like that, like those are I think those are some of the biggest benefits of being traditionally published. But it's not an easy road to get there.
No, and my agent and I also had what you just described. So after she signed with me, we spent almost a year and a half working on the manuscript together.
Wow.
After that,
Wow.
so we started working together in the fall of 2015. We sold the book in the spring of 2017, and it came
Wow.
out in the spring of 2019.
Wow.
So
Wow.
between when
4
my
years.
agent offered me representation and when the book like hit shelves was 4 years. Yeah.
Wow. I think that's really important for people to note. It's also, I'm in the process of kind of self-publishing. I mean, I'm on my own publishing company, so I don't know if it's self-publishing when you're the publisher. I don't know, but it's, but
It's
it,
reinventing. It's like a whole new genre of publishing. Yeah.
exactly. But the process moved so much faster than that. And even in this
Mm.
moment, I'm thinking to myself, did we move too fast? Is this going to be all those things? So I think timeline is really, really important for people to understand, getting your expectations around it, and for indie published authors to slow down a little bit, because I also think that's a big reason why traditional books do a lot better than indie books,
Mm.
is because of all of those rounds of revisions, because of all of those, nope, go back to the drawing board and do this, that a lot of indie authors don't do. So I think those are important takeaways, even though it has nothing to do with the topic that we are on hand with today.
And I just quit before we go to the topic we're on hand today. One other thought too, I agree with you. And I think one thing because I am increasingly like working with writers who are self-publishing or like interested in alternative publishing models. And I think one thing that was said to me from my publisher early on that made a lot of sense, because I didn't understand why. I was like, why is there such a long runway? I don't understand why my book sells and it's not going to come out for 2 more years. That just seems so long to me.
Mhm.
And my editor said, well, we have to create a place for your book to land.
Yeah,
Like there is so much marketing that's done. The marketing doesn't happen after the book comes out. It's all
no,
happening before the book comes out.
exactly.
And I think that's a really good lesson. That's a really good lesson for people self-publishing too. Like you don't just put it out there and then readers find it, right? It's not
Right.
like build it and they will come. You
No,
have
absolutely
to
not.
you have to create a place for it to land so that people are waiting for it.
Yes,
ideally.
exactly. I love that phrase. I'm going to write that down. Create a place for it to land. That's great advice. Um, okay, so you work with writers now and you help them establish their writing goals based on Enneagram type. So let's talk about, first of all, for someone who's never heard about Enneagram, what does that even mean? What is it?
So the Enneagram is like a personality assessment. It's one of these tools like Myers-Briggs or, I don't, other ones. I probably
The
can't, I'm not
INFJ, is
as
that
familiar.
Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, that's like
Yeah, yeah,
INFJ.
okay.
Are you, I'm an INFJ. Are you an
I
INFJ?
believe I'm an INFJ. People don't believe me when I tell them that, but I'm pretty sure I am.
It's a lot. It's a very uncommon one, INFJ, but a lot of writers are INFJ.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not even the Enneagram. The Enneagram like there are 9 personality types in the Enneagram model, and they have numbers 1 through 9. And it's a way of describing your motivation. So what drives you? And I found it, of all the personality tests I've taken, and I love them. I just think they're fun to take. I've always enjoyed taking them. This is the one that really made me feel the most exposed when I took it. And also it really helped me harness, like once I started reading about my type, which is a 3, I'm a 3. It really helped me understand myself better and like navigate my own motivation better. So because of that, yeah, I now so I'll work with people now writing books. So mostly writing novels and memoirs. And they'll work with me to finish their book projects, which is of course a giant undertaking. And so motivation becomes really, really important for like understanding what's driving an individual person, and the same, like what kind of resistance they come up against. When they get stuck, why are they getting stuck? Like, what is the voice in their head actually saying? And the Enneagram helps us understand that. So we
Yes.
can figure out their type and then help them figure out ways of navigating around those internal blockers.
It's really funny. I've taken the test 2 or 3 times and I can never remember what my type is. Like I take it and I think I can't remember if I'm a 2, a 3, or a 4, or a 2 wing 3 or what. And I know that I thought I was 1 and my sisters were all like, "Oh no, you're definitely," if I thought I was a 2, they were like, "No, you're definitely a 4," whatever. So I probably should take the test again and actually maybe print out my results because I forget stuff like that. I totally forget. But anyway, that's totally beside the point here. But how how would you, let's say you have somebody who's a 2. I don't know if you want to go with it, or maybe a 3 since that's yours and you know it the best. How do you work with them to have that impact there? And what do you mean by writing goals? Are we talking word count? Are we talking what we're going to get out of publishing goals? Like what are the goals we're setting here with this?
Yeah. So everyone I work with is trying to finish a book. Like that's their first, they're like trying to finish the draft. Many of them want it to be published traditionally, but not everybody. Some are publishing it themselves. Or some don't even care about publication, but everybody's working on finishing the book.
Okay.
So what I end up talking with people about is what comes up in that process. Like, what does it feel like when when you're like, oh, I'm at 10,000 words, but I'm stuck. I can't keep going.
Mhm.
Um, and for each of the Enneagram types, it can manifest differently. So for instance, you said a 2, and I think 2 is a really interesting example because the 2 on the Enneagram is the helper. And the helper tends to be the person who, like the friend who remembers everyone's birthday, who like brings to the potluck, they bring the thing that took the longest to make.
Okay, maybe I'm not a 2. If those are the examples of 2.
Or yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I think you would know. Like twos give really thoughtful gifts. They're just always thinking of other people. They're anticipating other people's needs. They're really generous. They're like the kind of person who people would describe as selfless often.
Mhm.
And they may be really successful, but I mean, my sister's a 2, but they do things for other people. They're extremely thoughtful. And so for a 2 who's a writer, can sometimes be tricky is carving out time to work on their book at the expense of the responsibility they feel toward other people.
Okay.
So for instance, I work with a 2 who she's found success as a writer, but she writes middle grade fiction, but she's done it she literally writes like in her van in the carpool line at school picking up her kids. Or
There's a
she
lot of
will,
time spent there. That's a good place to write a book.
yeah, and she's found a way to do that in her notebook. Or she was telling me this morning, she'll wake up in the middle of the night to get writing done, because when she said that, some other people who were listening were horrified. But she was like, no, this really works for me, because it's so hard for her to step away during the day, that because she wants to be available as a parent. And you don't have to be a 2 to want to be available as a parent, I realize. But like, I just think the numbers can be really helpful in thinking this through, because, for example, an 8 on the Enneagram is going to be very different than that. So an 8 is called like the challenger. Oftentimes, these are people who are not at all afraid of confrontation. Like your
Definitely
friend.
not an 8.
Me neither. Not at all afraid of confrontation. They do not hide their opinion. They're the people who will like bring up the controversial topic at Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone knows what they think. 8s tend to, yeah, they like an 8. If an 8 sets out to write a book, they're kind of not going to worry about who they mow down along the way. So that's what I mean. It's
authors.
yeah. And then you have, we don't need to go through all of them, but I'm just kind of giving you a sense of
No,
how
I
this
think it's
stuff can
interesting.
manifest.
You can talk about this as much as you want to. This is
Okay, cool. So like a 4 is sometimes called like the artist. The 4s really want more than anything to be unique and special, to feel really unique and special. So they often they get paralyzed sometimes creatively, because they don't think what they're writing is original enough. Like they'll get the they'll be paralyzed by thinking, oh, I'm just writing the same story everybody. This is too tropey or too cliche.
Right.
So it's like battling that fear through, talking around various things, like, well, really, a lot of the same story is just repeated in different ways, and
Right.
things like that. Ones I'm just thinking all the different writers I work with. So like ones are perfectionists. I know we all probably have a little bit of a perfectionist streak, but ones are like super perfectionists.
Super perfectionist.
So they notice really little details and get really bothered if those are wrong. That's a certain kind of being frozen, or stuck.
Yeah. These are the ones who never finish their book because they get so caught
Yeah.
up on all the little details. Yeah, that's hard to watch as an author coach. That's really hard to watch. I've seen a few authors just get so hung up on few things that they never get to the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's like a very specific kind of being stuck, that like the 4 isn't doing that, right? Like the 4 has a different fear, which is like, I'm not original, I'm not special. 5 is sometimes like the kind of caricature of a 5 is the absent-minded professor. So it's someone who gets stuck in the rabbit hole of research. It's like the person who comes to you and says, I've been researching for my book for 12 years and I haven't started.
Okay, it's time to write.
Yeah, that's a 5. 3s, I'm curious if you're a 3. So 3s are, because you mentioned 2, 3. You said you're not a 2. 3s tend to be, sometimes called the achiever, but 3s are pretty high achieving. We tend to be pretty ambitious. 3s at the extreme end can kind of be workaholics. Like we pour ourselves into our work a lot. 3s usually don't have a problem finishing their books.
Okay.
That's not the problem. 3s have a hard time accessing their feelings. So sometimes, and this is what I did for years. I was writing and rewriting my book and it didn't have any emotions in it. It was like clever and I thought the plot was like smart, but no one was feeling anything in it, which is like a very 3 thing.
Yeah.
So that's a 3.
Yeah.
7s, I'm skipping all over here, but 7s are the life of the party. Often they're like really fun. They love chasing new like they kind of have shiny object syndrome. So 7s love starting projects, and sometimes in the writing world 7s will be like the person who starts a bunch of different projects but doesn't finish any of them.
I feel like I might be a 7. You're calling me out here. No, I finished my book finally, but I was working on like 4 books at the same time. And that's kind of the way the next project is
That
too. I'm
sounds
like, do I do this one or this one or this one or this one? Or what do I do?
that
Yeah,
sounds a little 70. And are you really fun at parties?
I can be. Yes, I
Because that's a very 7 attribute too.
can.
Um, so that's 7. And then the only 2 I think we haven't done are 6 and 9. 9s are the peacemaker. So that's like that's the person who's always like mediating. Like
Uh-huh.
if there's conflict at the Thanksgiving dinner table, it's the person who's like, let's all just get along. Like that's the 9.
Not a 9. I'm usually the
And
instigators.
well, and the 9 is like I've heard it called like the least ambitious of the Enneagram. So 9s are pretty comfortable sitting, just kind of sitting in what is. So sometimes 9s can struggle to finish.
Mhm.
Um because they tend to just like harmony and sitting in harmony. And then
Writing a book is not harmonious, I'm gonna tell you.
right. Um, and then the last one is 6s. 6s, I've heard it, my friend who's a 6 the other day described it as the nervous gatherer. So
Ah,
6s tend to be sort of looking ahead to the future, to be afraid of what's going to happen and then preparing for it. So
mm,
they have like a catastrophe plan. They're the ones who are like, okay, we need a plan B and then a plan C. And so 6s can sometimes get in their head, like catastrophe forecasting what's going to happen. Like, okay, but if I finish this book and then I'm not going to be able to sell it and no one wants to publish it, and then why did I do it in the first place? Like they can sort of spiral out into future
right,
catastrophizing.
right. How interesting. So, well, all of us need to go take this Enneagram test and then come back and
Yeah.
re-listen to see how that runs true for us. But once you have, so I'm just gonna throw this out there. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but you have this group of writers, you're helping them write their book. Do you actually make all of your writers take the test and then you work
Hmm.
with them specifically on how to, yeah, talk
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, exactly. So they'll take the test, they'll figure out what their number is. And then we talk about various types of writing goals. And so it's not like a one-to-one. It's not like you're a 6, so this is what you should do. It's
Mhm.
more like, let's figure out what you are. Let's understand your motivation. And then let's look at all these different types of writing goals that you could use. And then see with this kind of new awareness of being formed by the Enneagram, of being informed by the Enneagram, choose a writing goal type that feels really good to you. So maybe that's word count. I'm going to write 1,000 words a day, but for a lot of people, it's not. Like word count shuts a lot of people down.
Yeah.
Um, I write by hand. I write my first drafts by hand.
Wow.
So yeah, I started doing that with my second novel because I was really like found the computer very daunting and it worked really well. So now that's what I do. And so when I work with writers, I encourage them to try that, especially if the computer's working, great. But if it's not, I'm like, just try writing by hand because it made a big difference for me. So for people who are writing by hand, sometimes page count can be good. Just
Yeah.
count, like, right? Like I'm going to write 5 pages of a notebook per day. Or I'm going to write one scene per day, and 70 scenes makes a novel. Like that's a very calming, to me, that's a very calming kind of goal. I'm going to write 1 scene per day, no matter how long it is. Um, or I'm going to find little pockets of time. Like I'm going to write, like looking ahead at the day and saying, I'm going to write in the carpool line when I'm waiting to pick up my kid. I'm going to write when everybody is like, you know, I don't know, taking a bath after dinner. And then I'm going to find these 3 20-minute pockets to get
Right.
it done.
Right.
So it's like looking at all the options and understanding your own motivation and then choosing what fits best with your personality type and your life and lifestyle.
I really hope you're writing a book, Enneagrams for Authors, because this sounds like something really cool to dig into. For those
Thanks. Oh,
for
cool.
those who
Maybe I
aren't in,
will.
you
That'd be
totally
fun.
should. I mean, all this new age stuff that's coming out, like I'm fascinated by all of it, but I really do think it does. Just knowing more about yourself and how you do things. I was processing what you were saying there, and I was thinking about, could I actually write a book by hand? I actually bought a really nice notebook when I was in Paris not too long ago, and I bought a really nice journal. And my goal, and I was thinking I would write my next book in there, but then I'm thinking about how I am and how I process and how I do things. And I don't write linear. I write all over the place. Like I might have some characters and I might be into a scene and then I'm like, oh my gosh, this needs to happen to this person. And I write that. So,
Yeah.
writing, handwriting, but there have been so much research that talks about how much more your brain connects into the creative aspect when you're actually writing with a pen on paper than it does when you're typing. So I'm thinking maybe I
Yeah.
should try this and maybe I just, you know, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be in order, I suppose, when I'm writing it in a book, handwriting it in a book.
No, because then when you transcribe it, you can organize it. Like the
Exactly.
transcription process becomes when you're organizing it.
Hmm.
Like you're kind of curating it as you transcribe, you know?
Hmm.
I found I found that research too. Because when I was working on my second novel, I had just had a baby and I had a newborn at home and I just couldn't type. I would stare at the computer and I couldn't. So I started handwriting and I found it so liberating that I was like, I have to understand this. There must be science on this. So when I Googled it, I couldn't believe I found some of that too that said like
Yeah.
when you're handwriting, your brain is doing things differently than when you're typing.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
rang true to me. That felt like what I was
It does. It really
experiencing.
it's fascinating actually just how much different, and even I've seen some research on the different colors that you write with, like different inks and with those
Oh,
like there's so
that's
much. I mean, if you want to get
cool.
really nerdy, like you can
Oh,
really
that's
dig into some
cool.
interesting research behind all of this. But okay, so what would you propose to authors who want to learn more about this and incorporating this into their writing? What's the first step? I mean, obviously the first step is to take the test, but then what?
Yeah, I would just go to the Enneagram Institute, look up the Enneagram Institute online because they have tests, they have tons of once you figure out your number, there's so much to read there. You could spend hours and it's reputable, it's really rich, and I think that just that understanding alone I think can really help people approach their writing goals in maybe a new way because
Mm.
they'll kind of see oh, this is me, this is what I'm afraid of, so let me have that in mind when I'm thinking about how I'm going to approach my next writing project.
Yeah. And if they want to specifically work with you, tell us. I mean, it's your program isn't just about Enneagrams and helping people with their goals. What else are you doing? I'm sure that's
No.
my assumption.
So yeah, it's so they can go to thebookincubator.com, which is what my program is called, the Book Incubator, and then they can just read about it there. But basically I help people finish their books and then pitch their books if they want to be published traditionally
Very cool.
to agents. And then so this Enneagram piece is kind of like just one small part of that
Right.
because to get books ready to pitch, they first have to write them.
The
So
book incubator. Everybody
yeah,
remember that.
the Book Incubator, exactly.
Okay. Well, do you have anything else that you would like to share? Sometimes I don't know if you had any key tips you wanted to share or anything like that. This is your open mic opportunity with whatever else we didn't cover that you want to get out into the world.
Cool. Yeah, I would love to say, if leave people with anything, you don't have to have hours and hours a day to write a book. I mean, you can finish a draft of a book. I think I see people do it in a season. It's about how long I take to write a first draft. And
Mhm.
like I said, people once you find the right goal type and the right kind of writing schedule with your lifestyle, I see people do it when they have a million other things going on. They have a full-time
Yeah.
job and family and they're still able to get it done. So you can make it happen. People are doing it.
Yay. Well, I'm a testament to that. I mean, I'm running all these businesses and doing all these things. And I just, this is funny comment here. I was listening to a relationship podcast because that's the season of life that I am in at 45 years old and thrown back into a whole new world of straight up insanity. But anyway, I was listening to this relationship thing and they were talking about breakups and all these types of things, and I promise this is going to relate. But the therapist said, when people really, they were talking about relationships and getting ghosted by people or whatever. When people really want it, they'll do it. When people really want to do something, they do it. And that applies
Mm,
so with writing too. I mean, you can make excuses all day long. You can say you work a full-time job or you're doing this or you're doing that or all these other things. But at the end of the day, when you want it badly enough, you will make a way to figure it out and to do it.
yeah. Yeah. 100%. I like that. And I love that you listen to relationship podcast.
Well, let me just tell you that dating in your 40s when you are a mother is wow.
A whole
That's all
new
I
world.
That's just, I mean, this book that I'm publishing in December is supposed to be the first of a 3-book series, but I'm seriously thinking about putting the second book on hold to write about what life is like right now, because I feel like the women my age who are in this period need a book.
Yeah,
It'd be a
do
fiction
it. I
book.
would love to read that book.
Oh, yay. All right. Well, there's my first validation. So
That's
it's
all you need.
world. Oh my gosh. Well, this was a great conversation. I really appreciate learning a little bit more about this, and I'm going to dig into it. That's the first thing I'm going to do actually, is go take my Enneagram test again and figure out what I actually am. But just go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say there's also a 2-question test. Like if you just Google 2-question Enneagram test, it'll come up on Reddit. That's the last time I found it. But that's also great for people who are just like, listen, I'm curious, but I'm not going to sit here for 30 minutes and take a test. I want to take a test in 3 minutes. And it's pretty accurate. It's pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. A 2-question. Okay, I'm gonna have to take that one just to see what
Just
it
to
says.
see. Yeah.
And I really sometimes I think I have multiple personalities, so I'm really curious to do both to see if they match.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, so much fun. So make sure that if you are interested in the book incubator, you go to apply.maryadkinswriter.com. You can go to Instagram and follow Adkins maryadkinswriter.com. All the links, we will make sure these are in the show notes. So again, you can go straight over there and just click on all of those links. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk today.
Thanks, Alexa. Me too. This was so fun.
You don't have to give me your heart. You don't have to give it away. You don't
Thank you for joining us on the Publisher Podcast. We hope to see you back for the next episode. Great, huge thanks goes to Jasmine Commerce for the use of her song. You can find Jasmine on SoundCloud. Go check out all of her music. We'll see you next time.